Let's do this. That's what it's all about. Literally, that's what it's all about mainly. Resources, coffee. My name is Harry Allen, and this is Latin American news in 10 minutes. Bang! Good little start there. Who would have thought the Ukrainian separatism, or whatever you want to call it, conflict, would end up on the shores of Latin America? Well, Russia thought exactly that. This week, Deputy Foreign Minister for Russia, let me check his name, Sergei Rybakov. That's it. Basically, Ukrainian officials, Russian officials have spent the last week in Geneva trying to sort out the issues in eastern Ukraine, where many have said that there are Russian separatist or Russian-backed fighters trying to cause the breakup of Ukraine. Russia think it's theirs, Ukraine think it's theirs, and it generally has been Ukraine for a while now, for about 30 years, and this has basically caused a lot of tension amongst the Russians, who feel this is their territory. This is ex-USSR territory, and pre the 1990s it basically was. But as you can see, this has spilled out into Latin America. How does this connect, you might say? Well, in 1962 there was something called the Cuban Missile Crisis, and essentially Russia threatened to deploy arms to Cuba or in Cuba to threaten the US, because at the time that was the Cold War, and that was just the way things went.
This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba.
America and Russia were at loggerheads, and now it seems to be that Russia are threatening a repeat of that. Now, this time it includes Venezuela as well, who are particularly warm to Putin's government in Russia. Nicolas Maduro, who runs Venezuela, would welcome Russian interference, as he often sees America as the enemy and cause of all his problems in Venezuela, which is debatable, and it could just be a political tactic. But, you know, I'm not here to tell you my opinion too much, so make what you will of it. Is this just an empty threat by the Russians? We'll find out in the coming weeks and months, and likely years. Russia's place on the international stage has recently taken a hit since the fall of the Soviet Union, but this doesn't mean that they are incapable of making incursions, causing problems around the world. We can see this in the interference of the US elections, the annexation of Crimea in 2014, and also the intervention in Syria, which has pretty much left Assad in power despite over 10 years of on and off conflict and civil war. Anyway, this is Latin America. We are talking about Latin America. Next up, Venezuela again.
Disbelief and joy at the opposition headquarters in the state of Barinas.
Okay, so an opposition candidate in Barinas province in Venezuela has won a local election. Now, this is actually incredible news if it can be verified, and if it isn't a political tactic of
dictator / ruler / president
Nicolas Maduro.
Now, over the last 5 to 10 years of him being in power, Nicolas Maduro has sought to crush opposition and essentially crush freedom of expression. The biggest migrant crisis in Latin America has ensued. Over 3 million people have just fled the country. Alongside this, the country is pretty much the poorest in Latin America, and that being said, one of the poorest in the world. They have an absolutely horrendous human rights record according to the UN. Now, the election result was won by a member of the opposition party of Juan Guaido. Now, many countries, including the US, see him as the de facto ruler of Venezuela, but Maduro, have no question about it, he is firmly in charge. I have a Spanish teacher who is Venezuelan, and he believes that it's a political ploy by Maduro to show that the country has an air of stability and that opposition are allowed to speak. Now, whether it is a political ploy or not, it's an interesting win as well, because Barinas in Venezuela is a heavily oil producing region, and it's crazy to see the opposition win in a place that Maduro has put a lot of time, invested a lot of effort and resources into the area. So it's going to be a very interesting year for Venezuela. Are the seeds of change beginning to sow? Who knows? The vote actually was also won with 55%, which is, for me, it's a little bit dubious. Oh, just the 5%. You know, it was a close one. It was a close one. But who knows? Maybe this is good news for Venezuela, who can finally exit or see an exit towards the last couple of years, which have been horrendous for the country. A country that historically, actually, contemporarily, should be very wealthy, considering their oil reserves, which are largely untapped, but fuck it. Right. We back. Moving on to the next story, and we are going to El Salvador.
Because...
Not thanks to Bitcoin, no. Dozens of journalists have had their phones or personal private devices, whatever you want to call it, they've had their data leaked, or it's found that their devices have been hacked into using a software called Pegasus, which was created by an Israeli spyware company called NSO. I've spoken about this a little bit on TikTok, and over the next couple of years or months, you're going to be hearing stuff about the personal details of leaders, of politicians, of pretty much any public figure in the world. Sensitive information is going to be released. But the main thing is that in El Salvador, thanks to the University of Toronto's Citizen Lab, which basically conducts investigations into wrongdoing in other countries, found that dozens of journalists in El Salvador basically had their phones hacked by the Pegasus spyware. Now, it's unsaid whether the El Salvadorian government has bought into the spyware, which was unveiled last year as being sold to corrupt governments around the world to spy on citizens. You know, who would have thought this was coming? El Salvadorian officials have denied that this was being used for malicious purposes or that it was being used at all. However, the journalists that were involved were investigating state corruption, and most of them were from the independent news agency called El Faro. Now, if you ask me, this is a little bit of a fishy one, because El Salvadorian president Nayib Bukele, the Bitcoin buccaneering president, who also has named himself the world's coolest dictator and currently CEO of El Salvador in the past, he has a history of subverting democratic institutions. Just a couple of months ago, he removed, I think, 5 or so Supreme Court judges and the Attorney General from the El Salvadorian courts, effectively paving his way for a second term in office, which was pretty much banned under El Salvadorian law, but it looks like it's going to have that second term. Now, let's connect the dots. They're denying it. Probably, maybe the El Salvadorian government was using this to spy on journalists because of the crackdown, I guess, on freedom of expression and on opposition in the country. Now, this is kind of a shame because the world looks at El Salvador, especially a world which is less knowing of what happens in South America and goes, oh yeah, they had adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, but realistically this is just a complete John Cena, you can't see me kind of affair, where they're basically playing games with the electorate and with the wider international community. Let's talk about Bitcoin and make this crazy scene so we can avoid the eyes of the investigative journalists and the prying eyes of the media around the world who might expose what we're doing. But again, this is just an opinion. Make what you will of it. It is what it is. Governments need to stop using this shitty software. Okay, on a much more somber note, a rockfall in the southern Brazilian state of Minas Gerais, I think I said it right again, has killed more than 10 people and injured about 30 others. Now, after heavy rains in the region causing 17,000 people to evacuate their homes, this rockfall was, it was not expected, but you can geologically expect this kind of thing to happen. Now, the video is quite horrific, and yeah, it's just a horrible, horrible story. Brazilian officials have said the boats should have been 0.6 kilometers away from the site, but like when you look at the video, how is that even measured in kilometers? They were so close. Now, if you ask me, whichever Brazilian politician said that is just an idiot. He's just completely shifting the blame elsewhere, and even shifting it pretty much on the victims and the tour operators. That's not going to solve anything, is it?
Ridiculous.
Anyway, it's crap, and it's a horrible story, and it's proper extreme. I'm not sure if they've taken down the video now, but yeah, I'll maybe leave a link to it because it's fucking, I've never seen anything like that. It looks like CGI, unless, like, being honest, it's horrible. Anyway, another extreme situation, maybe not as somber, not as sad, is the heat waves in Argentina, in and around the area of Buenos Aires. Temperatures have gone more or less as high as 45 degrees Celsius, which for my American watchers or viewers is, give me a sec, 113 degrees Fahrenheit as well, which is pretty hot. But yeah, that caused the power grid around Buenos Aires to shut down for some time. 700,000 people were left without power, which is mental. I didn't really expect that. I've been to Buenos Aires in the past, and it didn't seem like it could get that extreme weather-wise, just because of where it is on the globe, because it's so far south. It's not really near the equator, but if anyone can tell me in the comments why. So it's good to see Argentinians making light of the situation in times that can be pretty difficult for people who haven't got the privilege of air conditioning or running water. So yeah, maybe I'll post some of the memes here. Pause the video if you need to see them. I just thought they were quite funny. Some of you might think they're quite cringy, but In other notable news, Mexico's President Obrador has caught COVID for the second time. Many of you probably are sick of hearing about COVID, so done, close that one down. But yeah, that is the week in Latin America with Harry Allen in 10 minutes. Probably is going to be way over 10 minutes, but all I'm going to say is like, subscribe. Don't have to. I just do this for fun, but just do as you please. Sharing it would probably be better. If I knew anything about digital marketing, I think sharing. Up to you. Gracias por escuchar. Thanks for listening. And yeah, maybe I'll do another one of these, but we'll see how life goes, because yeah, thanks for watching. Yeah.